All right, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Excited to talk about this because this is what I do every day. I study partnerships, I study channels and alliances and influencers and things like that. So this is my team. I love talking about this. So I want to go into this 75% number. Traditionally, partnerships have been about transactions. They've been about the resell. You bought a car, your last car at a dealer. You bought your last TV at a retailer. You bought your last jar of peanut butter at a grocer. That's the 75% of world trade. That's about $60 trillion that go through others. What we're talking about now, and I think the most exciting thing, is a whole new level of partnerships. The influencers, the advocates, the alliances, and all the things that come together with new buyers in B2C and B2B. And that's what I'll be talking about today. And to go into this third stage idea, I want to dive into that because it makes a lot of sense. 20 years ago, Salesforce.com got its start. There was over 300 CRM companies back then. Not sure if you know that. Over time, that consolidated, it compressed, the industry matured, and now we probably have 4 or 5 winners in that space. 10 years ago, the same thing happened in marketing. There was 150 marketing automation companies 10 years ago. And now we know Marketo, which was mentioned, Pardot, Eloqua, HubSpot, Acton. We know the 5 winners that came out of that space. Well, today there's 106 channel software companies that build some sort of partnership software. And with those 106, we're predicting over the next 10 years, there's going to be 4 or 5 winners. And as we go through this next decade, what's happened to sales, to marketing, is now going to happen to partnerships. I don't know if for those of you that were around 20 years ago, you used to hear salespeople walk around managing territories with their gut. You used to hear them say, in the corner, you got to be born to be a salesperson. That's gone. A VP of sales today manages to the 7th decimal point. They're in front of the board. They're in front of the CFO. They're lobbying for new investment dollars. Hey, give me this and I'll hire this many people and this will be your return. Well, then marketing people, got smart. Before this, you used to hear marketing people joke around, 50% of my marketing dollars are wasted. I just don't know what 50%. Ha, 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 ha. Well, today, that doesn't happen. The marketing, the CMO, spends more on technology than the CIO. The CMO or VP of marketing is in that same boardroom. Don't give it to sales, give it to me. Because here's my levers and dials. This is where I'm going to put that money. This is your return. What we don't have yet, and what I'm so excited about with Impact and others, that the channel chief is now going to enter that room with that same precision and science. We've been living a little bit like Rodney Dangerfield, not getting a lot of respect, because we don't have the science. Because we know, in the research I'll be sharing, is that partnerships actually drive more. If you're going to give $1 to sales or $1 to marketing, the channel or the partnerships actually drive more. And it's a place that's kind of been ignored for 20 years. So we're on the start of this 10-year journey, and we couldn't be more excited. So you will see, scattered throughout reports. And Impact commissioned a pretty expansive study with Forrester, and it just got completed. And it's really, really interesting. And we'll be talking about it through the day at lunch and everything else. But it was exciting to see some of the findings that came from that. And as Dave mentioned in the opening, partnerships are increasingly crucial to growth, to revenue growth, to profit growth, to other things. But we didn't expect how much. So I just want to take you through some examples. I'll use some B2B examples and consumer examples. But a couple of weeks ago, Salesforce announced they're going to double the size of their company in the next 4 years. Today they're at 13 billion, they want to grow to 26. Well, they went and did the work and said they're going to require 250,000 new partners to be able to get to that number. That's the level of breadth or scale that we're talking about here. What's interesting is that at the exact same time they made that announcement, they shut down their reseller program. The gold, silver, bronze, make this much money for resell. They don't want that. The 250,000 new partners are going to be influencers, consultants, software companies, and integrators, installers, security companies, all kinds of companies that help that customer through the journey And it's not just about opening up new storefronts for them to get to that number. Microsoft is bringing on 7,500 new partners a month. 80% of these partners don't resell. They're not your 400,000 partners that they already have that go back 30 years selling Windows and Office 365 and things like that. These are new types of partnerships that look more like influencers and advocates and alliances, and they're building up a program to handle this end to end at a scale I can't even imagine onboarding 7,500 new a month. But this is the kind of scale and breadth that we're talking about. AWS is doubled their size of their channel every year for the last 3 years. They're also bringing on about 3,000 new partners a month. So these are the type of numbers that we would have never seen before. For the last 37 years, partnerships have been pretty linear, pretty set up on this pyramid scheme, gold, silver, bronze, really anchored at that point of transaction. And this is the biggest change, and this is what's really kicking off, I think, the next decade. What's interesting, in the research that we did, 454 channel leaders took and helped us with this research. And 76% of them say that partnerships are key to delivering on their revenue goals. So this is a big change from what we've seen. 10 years ago, you might have seen a lower number, more geared towards marketing or sales. We're seeing some big changes happening. The second thing that we pulled from the research is it takes a multifaceted approach. Again, we've talked about this linear, let's set up our program. There's 90 parts of the average program. Let's put in our recruiting and targeting and onboarding strategy. Let's get our education, training, certification strategy. Let's get our incentives, motivation, loyalty thing bolted down. Figure out then how to co-sell and co-market and go to market. And then in the end, how do we manage, measure, and report on all that? That's been somewhat of our approach, for the last 37 years, and that's changing. So in the research, the responses were, there are a ton of different kinds of partnerships, and we require them all. And if you think of the journey that the customer goes through, the buying journey or the customer journey, you've heard it talked about, that first digital part of the journey, when Dave mentioned, millennials, but it's everyone, is spending 68% of their time before talking to somebody. So when you look at the 68% and go through the day in the life of that journey, what are they seeing? Who's influencing them through that journey? Then they get to the point, almost half of them choose vendors, make vendor selection before ever talking to somebody. How does that happen? The point of transaction, and then most industries and most products now are moving to subscription. So the journey never ends. You have to renew them, retain them, expand them every 30 days, every year, whatever it is, forever. So at every one of those 4 cases, which are the partnerships that you need to make sure that you drive your business? And we're seeing that all kinds of different kinds of partners are important to making that happen. So we're stopped talking now about this gold, silver, bronze, this pyramid scheme that we've been in for decades. We're starting to talk about ecosystems now. And you see major companies in all industries, all 27 industries, talk about ecosystems. And what's interesting about an ecosystem is, rightfully so, it starts with the customer. So if you think in the solar system, you've got the sun or the main star being the customer. You start looking at the orbiting planets around that star. Those are the different partnerships that become important to you. And again, it's not linear. It becomes somewhat celestial in the way that you manage partners. So to use a technology example, there are 175,000 software companies today. 10 years ago, there was 10,000. 10 years from now, there's going to be 1 million software companies. You've probably seen this one. This is the MarTech stack. It's about 7,000 of those 175,000 on one piece of paper. But I could show you stacks that are built around buyers. This is marketing buyer, but sales, operations, finance, HR, et cetera. I can show you stacks that are built around industry or sub-industry. There are 297 sub-industries. So I could show you a mid-size healthcare ambulatory clinic stack. I actually build the channel software stack. There's 297 of those. There's geography stacks, ones that are focused on Europe, ones that are focused on upstate New York, ones that are focused around the world. Number 4, there's stacks that are built around the customer segment, size, or sector. So think of SMB stacks, there's enterprise Fortune 500 stacks, government stacks, healthcare stacks. Finally, the solution. So in this case, it's technology, but whatever the solution is, there's 40 layers of technology. If you multiply all 5 of those together, there's 35 million customer opportunities or customer conversations going on in the marketplace right now. Why is there going to be 1 million software companies? To take advantage of those 35 million conversations. So hopefully with these big numbers, you're starting to get the sense of breadth. You think your 100 partners sitting on your gold, silver, bronze program are going to have 35 million conversations on your behalf? They're not. This is why this research is showing us why the conversation is expanding. So I want to break out of this a little bit and talk about some other examples. Dave gave some great examples on B2C and how software companies are coming together to really integrate well. How more traditional can you get than a forklift? You know what a forklift does? It only does one thing. It lifts stuff. And it's in a construction industry. I mean, it couldn't be more laggard if I tried on the 297 industries. But this forklift actually has an Internet of Things device that actually measures where it is, what it's doing, and how much it lifts. They changed their pricing model to match what the customer wants, to lift stuff. So by the weight that this lifts is how much you get charged. Not by the day, not by the job, not what is traditional. But now there's this ecosystem of partners. It generates a lot of data that needs to be managed, and business insights and all that comes from it. It generates some mobility, the technology that allows it on the job site to connect and to be able to transfer. So you can start to think of the celestial, all the partners wrapped around this. And you can imagine in the construction industry what that tech stack looks like, built around a forklift. But the main thing is the customer and the manufacturer are now on the same page. They both are after the same KPIs. One more example, another very traditional one is trains. Hitachi in this case would be selling this train by the month, by the year, by the mile, some sort of long-term lease. Well, today they're selling this as a percentage of revenue. They'll take a percentage of every ticket sold for the riders. What this does is sets up their KPIs identical to the actual government who's buying it. Both are encouraged to keep this train on the tracks. If it's in maintenance, Hitachi makes nothing. So Hitachi wants to make sure that the ride is optimized. They want to bring in data from around the world to perfect this train schedule and all the different logistics around it. Both are sitting at the table with the exact same goals in mind, and all the ecosystem of partners can come in and help that. This is just the point that every industry, every part of the world is thinking through partnerships. You're just not making forklifts anymore. So as we go forward, it's this aligning to, selling to, through, and with these partners becomes critical. And it's not the one-to-one relationship we've had in the past. Here I am, I build mattresses, and here's the furniture store, or the mattress store, and there's the customer. It's a surrounding ecosystem of partners that become important in that scenario. So we went and asked the next question, which is, what do you do next? There's all these pieces and parts, and what is the silver bullet, in terms of where you really put your money and time, people, process, and technology that we talked about? And the research told us that there is no silver bullet. It is inherently complex. We'd love to have partnerships, be something that's simple and predictable and repeatable and have playbooks and things, and it's just not. It's messy. So the ability to be able to do it, and as you can see here, a lot of the answers were, highly rated, but there was nothing that jumped out in terms of what's the most important. So we looked at it, and I don't expect you to read this, but I think you will get the slides after. But these are the 90 parts of the traditional program. Starting at the left on how do you design it, then find and recruit and enable, onboard, incent, co-sell, and then manage it all. So these are all the pieces and parts that are managed, for let's say the last 37 years. But all of these still have to be done going forward to all of these different breadth of partners. So this is a little bit of a challenge, and we need some modern technology, we need modern processes and people to be able to do this kind of stuff at scale, and this is one of the major changes that we're going through right now. So number 3 is best-in-class partnership programs deliver competitive advantage through outsized revenue growth. So we start talking about partnerships in terms of competitive advantage is interesting. It's not one of these things that you silo over on the other side of the organization to just make it happen, and nobody knows how it works. It's kind of this magic little thing that happens over there. 80% of companies, by the way, in every industry, silo their partnership organization. The channel chief and the retail organization or the channel organization kind of sits out on their own. In most cases, that person doesn't report to the CEO. When Dave mentioned we're going to have chief partnership officers or chief channel officers or some type of role, this is an elevation of the importance of channels as a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Why? Well, the research came back and said channels work. Actually, they drive revenue 2 times faster than organizations that don't have mature channel programs. So if you're thinking, again, you're with the VP of sales, the VP of marketing, and you're there in front of the boardroom sitting, looking for dollars, this is the place for the next 10 years that's going to drive the most growth in every company around the world. And this is the argument that we have to have and needs to be supported. What's interesting is there's actually a 5 times more likely to exceed expectations on other KPIs. So revenue growth is absolutely the number 1 feedback on the survey, but think of profit, think of customer lifetime value, the cost to acquire customers, think about all the different metrics we're running in our organization. Channels actually drive all of them better than what we've been doing. So in terms of companies that have mature programs, 49% of them have seen a boost in revenue. So this idea, again, if you have $1 to spend on direct sales, $1 to spend on direct marketing, or $1 in terms of channels, there's significant more boost that you can get via indirect strategies. The other thing it does is reach and loyalty. So think about this idea of setting up a direct sales organization, able to make this many dials a day. You heard and you put up your hand in terms of how many people pick up those dials. You look at marketing, and a lot of the marketing plays a decade later have become stagnant. Our own research at Forrester shows that it's been stagnant for about 4 years in terms of using marketing technology, getting out there. A lot of the customer experience has been pretty much the same. You got a lot of digital sameness and stuff like that. So we're in a little bit of a rut, and partnerships provide that 3rd stage. So 45% of the survey saw a boost in awareness. So this is the visibility, the awareness side of the equation. So we're not talking revenue growth anymore. Now we're just talking branding, which is actually a critical part of the organization, usually talked about by CMOs and VPs of marketing. So if you're, again, getting into that conversation, the best way to build awareness and brand awareness is now through others. And when you roll it all back, I said it's kind of a complicated thing. You're managing so many levers and dials here that technology becomes critical. Most of this can't happen without a layer of AI and machine learning, predictive and prescriptive. And why this has taken, I think, 20 years to surface is because we need the technology to be able to make this happen. Now, this isn't something that you can just work a spreadsheet. We're all good at VLOOKUPs and pivot tables and stuff, but you can't add millions of this and millions of that and millions of this. The permutations go beyond what we can manage. So you've got to have a layer of technology, to be able to do this. So how does it drive better outcomes? There's really 3 things that came back in terms of the research. Those companies that have more mature programs that are boosting their growth actually look at partnerships as a competitive differentiator. It's not something you have to have. It's not checking the box. It's not one of those, oh my God, the channel costs us so much money. What are we doing over there? It's now, we're going to win against our competition via what we're building here in terms of influencers and partners. It's about scale. The one thing that came back through the research almost on every single question was breadth. Again, the permutations that you're looking at to be able to do this at scale is off the charts. And taking the company to the next level, almost every company hits a plateau. And it's something I get to study. Those 175,000 software companies I mentioned, about 30% of them now have hit a plateau. And they're hiring channel managers, they're hiring channel chiefs, they're looking at building those 90 parts of the channel program. But they're really looking to impact, they're looking to Forrester, they're looking to all of us in this room as experts on how to really leverage this effort to get past that plateau. I'll tell you, it's not a great conversation to have in front of the board when you're not growing by 30, 50% quarter on quarter, year on year. And then the other thing is they embed partnerships very early in the conversation. And I thought this was really interesting. You know, instead of building a product, you know, pricing it and doing all the work you do as a product manager, and at the end of that, figure out your go-to-market strategy, your routes to market, and then, you know, position that properly, they're starting with partnerships in mind. And then as you go to build the product, you're actually building it with all of this in mind, so that at the end of the, you know, product management piece, you're not deciding what your routes to market are going to be. It was built with that in mind. And I think this is interesting, is bringing it much early in the process. So to me, there was 4 things that jumped out. If I were to walk away from this session today and, you know, get back to the office and look at my colleagues, you know, the one is recruitment changes. You know, for those companies, whatever the industry is, that have had pretty traditional channels anchored around resellers or transactions, you've got to broaden it. The first thing I tell people is, you know, 81% of B2C or B2B buyers today, they look the same, start with a Google search. So do the Google search on behalf of your customer. I am a VP of marketing at a mid-sized clinic in upstate New York. I'm trying to bring new patients in the door, or I'll get fired next Thursday. Google that. The first 2 pages of Google are your potential partners organically. What the customer reads, where they go, and who they follow become critical. What they read, you'll see it on Google. The podcasts, the webinars, the blogs, all the things on social, all the things they inform them during that first 68% are sitting there right there. Every single one of those things on Google is a potential partner of yours. They should be. Second thing is where they go. The average person travels twice a year. You've come to this event. You're probably going to go to Vegas or something to go to some other event, but that's about the average. Figure out where people go. The most important thing, though, is influencing the influencers. Who are the top 100 people that might influence that mid-sized clinic VP of marketing? And you can go find that on Google. Who speaks at those events? Who runs the podcast? Who runs the webinar? Who is the author of that blog? Who's on the front cover of the magazine? Go look at who runs the association. Go look digitally around that and start scoring people. And every time they show up a couple times, give them check marks. When you get to the list of 1,000 people that influence mid-sized clinics in upstate New York, sort it by check marks. Grab those top 100 people, issue it as a company-wide email. Who do we know? Who are we linked in with? Who do we have conversations with? And you're going to find out that, you know, 90% of them you don't know. Well, you need to, because those 90%, those 90 people need to be partners of yours. They're influencing, you need to influence the influencers. That's a whole different approach to recruitment than adding in a few more resellers. So the ability to bring technology into this equation. Again, you're not going to do this with a spreadsheet. You're going to do this and be able to automate, but what this isn't is a digital transformation journey that's going to take 5 years and cost millions of dollars. You know, the first thing is people don't know a lot about indirect sales to start with, and they're not willing to write a big check. So you've got to iterate. You've got to automate one piece of it, maybe one of the 90 pieces. Then innovate, implement, integrate it, show some results, go back and create a cycle. So over that 5 years, you're adding, each quarter, you're adding something to this, and you're making it better. It's agile. It's you know, you're running little sprint sessions. Number 3 is look at partnerships as a strategic differentiator. Not as somebody who can sell more or influence more, but if you look at your direct competitors, this is something that's going to change your position in the marketplace. I included, Salesforce as an example. They think the 250,000 people early in the conversation are going to change their competitive place in the marketplace. And then the final one is about a village. These are my grain silos. Actually, tonight I fly to Saskatoon, Canada. I'm going to see some grain silos. The siloed part of the channel needs to break down. To make this all work, we have to work with marketing, sales, customer success. We have to work with operations. We have to work with finance. This whole idea of having channels or partnerships somewhere over on the side that nobody understands needs to break down. Before the chief partner or chief channel officer takes shape, I think that they need to get under the CRO. And you need to have sales and marketing and partnerships together as part of that journey. And understanding that internally and externally, it's going to take a broad set of people to make all this work. It's not just some project you're going to run with your team and go announce it to the world that we're doing this. It's got to take everyone. Everyone's got to buy into this next 10 years. And when we talk 10 years from now, we'll talk about the 4 or 5 winners in this marketplace. We'll remember our time here in New York today and looking forward. This is what it all took to make this happen. So thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.